Beginning at the Mishnah on the bottom of Peches Amud Beis. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, V'neder almana ugrusha yakum alav. So the simple pshat of the pasuk is, a woman, she's divorced or she was widowed, so whatever neder she makes, it takes effect because not her husband is going to nullify this neder, or ex-husband, and not her father. Once she got married fully and now she's divorced or widowed, so she's in her own rishus, so no one could nullify this neder. But the Mishnah here says that you have a neder, you have the time that the neder was made, and then you have the time when the neder took effect. So when we're talking about an amana and grusha, what do we look at? We look at the time when the neder was made, or do we look at when it takes effect? So the Mishnah, so how does this pasuk apply? Omra hareni nizira la'acha shloshim yom. So she says, I will be a nazir after 30 days. So she made the neder now, but it only takes effect later. So even though when she made the neder, she was not married, then she got married within 30 days, then the husband cannot be made for the neder. So the point that Tana is saying is that you go according to the time when the neder was made. So then she wasn't married. Even though later she got married, he can't nullify the neder. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, Nodra vihi b'rishus habal.
Anybody.
What do you mean, anybody?
A girl that's not married, she makes a neder, and she gets married.
But then the husband can't be made for the neder. True, but over here you may think, even though, not mitzvah the father, even though she made the neder before, but the neder takes effect when they got married. A husband can never be made for a neder from before the marriage. But the neder was only chal when she got married. But still, the husband can't be made for the neder.
What did we learn about before getting married, the husband, because a lot of us say all the Nedarim that you made?
Yeah, okay, if you make such a condition. Okay, but he got married to her, he didn't specify, and they got married, and this is what it is. Okay, Nadra v'hi b'rishus habal. She made a neder while she's married to her husband, so then meifula, the husband could nullify the neder. Okay, so here the Mishnah is going to bring the opposite example when the neder was made when she was in the rishus of the Baal, even though it only took effect later. So Keitzad, how does this apply? She's married now, and she says that I'm going to be a nazir, which will take effect after 30 days. So even if she became an almana and a grusha b'toich lamed within those 30 days, so when the neder takes effect, she's not married anymore. Nevertheless, the husband can come and nullify the neder because right now they're married. Now the Mishnah finishes off with another case. Nadra boy bayoim. She makes a neder, and on this very same day, and on the very same day she gets divorced, and then he remarries her on the very same day. So now the question is, he's married again to her, and it's still the same day, right? The halacha by neder is you could only nullify on the day that you hear from the neder. So he remarried her on that day. Nevertheless, he can't nullify the neder because once she left his rishos, so he lost the rights and the power that he has to nullify that neder. The fact that he remarries her, that's a second marriage. You can't nullify the neder from a previous marriage. Zok the Mishnah, Zeh klal, here the rule is as follows. Kol sheyotza l'rishus atzma sha achas. Once she leaves and goes into her own possession for one moment, so then any yachal the husband cannot nullify the neder. The Mishnah will explain, the Gemara that is, will explain actually that this Zeh klal is coming to be marba another case, as we'll see. Okay, so we have over here this Mishnah. The point of the Mishnah was that when it comes to the husband nullifying the neder, you follow the time that the neder was made, not the time when the neder takes effect. We're here, the Gemara brings a braise where there's a machlokes about this. Tanya, we learned in a braise, almano grusha shamra hareni nezira lekeshe enose. So an almana and a grusha, she's not married right now, and she makes a neder to be a nazir, and she spells out in her neder that when will the naziris take effect? When I get married. This is a little bit different than the case of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is that she made the neder, will take effect in 30 days. Right, so here she says, when I get married, it'll take effect. Vinisis, and she got married. Rabbi Shmuel loime yofer. Rabbi Shmuel says the husband could nullify the neder. Right, even though the time that she made the neder was before she got married, but because it takes effect now when she gets married, so the husband could nullify the neder. Seemingly not like the Tana of our Mishnah. Rabbi Kiva says, like we learned in our Mishnah, lo yafer. The husband cannot nullify the neder. Okay, now there's an interesting siman here in the Gemara. V'simone yalali. Okay, what exactly the siman is? Let's just finish this braise. Some are not even good. It's the siman altogether. And when we'll finish the Braise, I'll show you what the siman is here. Okay, the next case in the Braise, it's similar to what we learned in the Mishnah, and again, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Eishes ish she'amra. So now this woman is married, and she makes the neder. She says, "Hareini nezira, I will become a nazir likish es garish, when I get divorced." Garsha, and then she gets divorced, and the neder takes effect. Rabbi Shmuel says, "Lo yafer." The husband cannot nullify the neder again, because Rabbi Shmuel's opinion is that you go according to when the neder takes effect. It only takes effect after you divorced her. Rabbi Akiva says, like we learned in our Mishnah, you go according to the time when the neder was made, and she made it now when she was still married, so he could nullify the neder. So now look over here at this at the siman. So if you see here, there are two arguments between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says yafer in the first case, Rabbi Akiva says lo yafer. Then again in the second case, Rabbi Shmuel says lo yafer, and Rabbi Akiva says yafer. So that's the siman, yud, lamed, lamed, yud. Yafer, lo yafer, and yafer. That's what it's going on. Okay, but it's interesting, like in the middle of the Braise, there's a hefsek with this siman. Okay, now the Gemara brings the psukim, the source of the machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says, Harei Waimed, the pasuk says, V'neider amano grusha, the neider that an almana and grusha make. So then what happens? Kol asher asal nafshe yakum aleh, the pasuk there says, whatever neder she makes, it takes effect, and that's it. So how do we understand this pasuk? Achi yehei neder b'shas almanas u'gerishin. Neder almana is mashma, the actual neder that when she says the neder. So when she makes the neder, if it's during the time when she's not married, so then the husband can't nullify it. Okay, so this is the source that you go according to the zman when the neder is made, not when the neder takes effect. Rabbi Akiva says that there's another pasuk that says, it's actually in that pasuk itself. It starts off saying neder almana grusha, but right after that it says, Kol asha asra al nafsha yakum aleh. Whatever she made asa for herself in this time period, that will be asa for her. So what does that mean? Achi hey isurei neder b'shas almanas v'gerish. Not the actual neder itself, but when the isur of the neder takes effect, that's the time period that we go according to whether the husband could or could not be made for the neder. Okay, so now the Gemara comes back to compare the case of the Braise to the case of our Mishnah. So Amar Rav Chisda says, Masnisin Rav Akiva. Our Mishnah is following the opinion of Rav Akiva. Just like in our Mishnah it said that you go according to when the neder was made, not when it takes effect. So too in the Braise, Rav Akiva is the one that said that, not Rabbi Shmuel. Abaye says, Rabbi Shmuel. You could say that our Mishnah goes even according to Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel said in the Braise that you go according to the time when the neder takes effect, but it still could fit with our Mishnah. Why? So the point the Gemara is going to explain here, like I pointed out before, Mishnah and the Braise is not exactly the same case. In the Mishnah, what was the neder? She made a neder now, and she just gave it a time frame, a time period when it's going to take effect. In the Braise, it's a neder where she clearly is toila it in either marriage or the Gedushin. She says it will take effect when I get married. It'll take effect when I get divorced. So that there's a difference. What's the svar of the difference? So the Gemara explains. Afilatayim Rabbi Shmuel. We could say that our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Shmuel. Why? Masnisen talya nafsha biyoimi. In the Mishnah, she makes the neder now when she's married, and she says the effect of the neder will be in a certain time frame, certain days, 30 days. Okay, so therefore, now you have to go down one line. That's what the Bach here says. Go down one line where it says Shalmu. You see the word Shalmu right on below this. Shalmu Yaimi, when those days are up, that she said in her neder that it should take effect after 30 days, V'lein is Garsha, it could still be that she's not divorced. Shalmu Yaimi, V'lein is Nasva. And when those days are up, she's not necessarily going to be married at that time. So therefore, the point of here is what Rabbi Shmuel is saying, that in our Mishnah, when she makes a neder and she just gives a time frame for the neder, so the effect of the neder is not connected necessarily to the marriage or to the divorce. After 30 days, she's going to be married. You don't know if she's going to be married then. After 30 days, she's going to be divorced then. No, you don't know she's going to be divorced then. So why should you go according to the time when the neder takes effect and say that we have to look then what her condition is? Right now, when she makes the neder and she says 30 days, there's no reason to think that her status of what she is now is going to change. So therefore, in this case, Rabbi Shmuel would be Maida. So you go according to what her status is now when she made the neder. Okay, going back inside the Gemara, so back before we were holding. Braise, however, the case in the Braise where Rabbi Shmuel says you do follow the time when the neder took effect, Talia Nafsha Benisuin. There, she's making the neder before she got married, but the neder itself, she made the condition, she said, it's going to take effect only when I get married. So because she clearly said in the neder itself that it's taking effect when you get married, here, Dafke here, Rabbi Shmuel is saying that when she gets married, the husband could be made for the neder. And the same thing in the reverse. If she's married now and she specifically says that the neder is only taking effect when I get divorced, so why should the husband be able to be made for this? She specified that it's going to take effect dafka when she gets divorced. So therefore, there's no connection to what Rabbi Shmuel said in the Braise. He would agree to what it says in the Mishnah when she doesn't specify clearly the nisuin and the gedishin in her neder. Okay, the next line we read already that goes on before. Now, going to the Gemara where it says, Zeh HaKlal. Okay, so Zeh HaKlal goes back to the Mishnah over here that finished off with a klal, that once she leaves the husband's domain, the husband's possession for one moment, so then he can't be made for the neder. So, the Gemara here actually brings that this lashon of Zeh HaKlal we had similar earlier in the Masechta. Two prok in the previous Pedic. The Pedic over there was called Naira HaMirasa. So over there was a similar klal. So the Gemara now is going to explain what the Zeh HaKlal over there means and what the Zeh HaKlal over here means. So Zeh HaKlal diktoni gabe Naira HaMirasa. The Zeh HaKlal that it says by the Naira HaMirasa la suye. What is that coming to say? So what was the Zeh HaKlal that it said over there by Naira HaMirasa? Naira HaMirasa, what's the halacha? If she makes a neder, that is, so the father and the husband together have to be made for the neder. Right? Now, if she got fully married to her husband, so now only the husband could be made for the neder. And if she gets divorced, she never goes back to her father's rishos. That's it. She left. It's finished. Okay, but what happens if she was a naira mirasa? She never fully got married to her husband, and now she got divorced, and she got remarried to a second husband. So in such a case, just like the father could be made for the neder together with the first husband, the father could be made for the neder together with the second husband. But the Mishnah over there says the klal is if she left the father's domain for one moment, meaning she got already married to the first husband, so then if she gets divorced, the father will never be able to be made for the neder again, even together with the second husband. That was the klal the Mishnah said there. So by saying this klal, it's coming to be meisiv something, whether there's something to be marbe. Whenever the Mishnah says a klal, it's adding something. So what is that coming to be marbe? So the Gemara la suye, what it's coming to add over there is a situation where she didn't mamish fully get married to the second husband, but rather what happened was halach ha'av im shluchei abal. So what happens is she was already on her way to the nisuin. What's the difference between Edison and nisuin? Edison, she's an eshes, she gave her already a kedushin, but she's still living in her father's house. And now nisuin is that she's leaving her father's house and she's going to get fully married to live in her husband's house. So what happened over here? What happens if she left? The shluchim of the husband came to pick her up, to bring her to her husband's house. But when she left to go to the husband, so the father went along. The father went along to accompany her to her husband's house. Or even if the father himself did not go, the father sent a shliach to accompany her to her husband's house. Again, so either halacha avim shluchei abal, the father himself went with the shluchim of the Baal that came to pick up the wife to bring her to the husband, or shahalchu shluchei avim shluchei abal. The shluchim of the father went and accompanied the kala to go to the husband's house. So in such a case, the Naira Meirasa, by this is the case of the Naira Meirasa. She was just the first stage of marriage until now. The Avia Ubaila Mefirin Nedarau. So the husband and the father will still be able to be made for a neder. Meaning, if it didn't end up that she didn't end up in her father's in her husband's house, and before she actually arrived to her husband's house, she got divorced or her husband passed away, and then she got remarried a second time. So what the Mishnah is saying is, Enechanami, she left already her father's house on the way to her husband, but because the father went along, or the father shlucha went along, that's not considered to be that the father gave up his possession over her. So even if this husband dies or divorces her and she gets remarried a second time, the father will be able to be made for the Nedarim together with the second husband. Okay, so that's the Zeh HaKlal that's being marba over there regarding the Naira Meirasa, that it still maintains the status of Naira Meirasa.
And not if she's going together that with the shluchei from the Baal that he can
Yeah.
still be made for the neder then?
At that point, and that time also, l'chayre, yes, at that time as well, correct. Ze'aklal, now the Gemara says, Ze'aklal, the Tani Gabi ve'elu nedarim, the Ze'aklal that it says in the Pedic of elu nedarim, which is the Ze'aklal of the mission that we just read over here. Lasuye, what is this coming to say? So over here, the Ze'aklal of our Mishnah was that she goes out to the Shus Atzma Sha'achas en yochel lahofer. What is our Mishnah coming to say? So over here it's coming to say, Masa, the same case that we spoke about before. She's on the way to her husband's house. The husband sent the shliach to pick up his kala, his wife, to come to his house. And over here the case is, Masar ha'av l'shluchi ha'bal. The father gave over the daughter, the kala, to the shluchim of the husband. Oisha masroi shluchi ha'av l'shluchi ha'bal. Or the shluchim of the father gave over the kala to the shluchim of the husband. And the father did not accompany her, or he didn't send any shluchim to accompany her. That's it, she left his house. And they're on the way already. So in such a case, she becomes already fully married to the husband, and now the father has no possession over her. So what happens is, she'ena baal meifir bekoidmin. So over here, the husband now takes full possession over her, and he can be meifir, any neder she makes now when she's fully married to him. But if you remember, we learned before that a husband, after nisuin, cannot be meifir a neder that she made before marriage. In the time of Eidisin, which is the first stage of marriage, because she's being made for, the husband that is being made for the neder, together with the father, and the father has the rights to be made for the neder from her birth, or really not birth, she could only make a neder from the time of being a naira. So then, the husband could be made for the neder together with the father, even from the darim that she made before she got married to him. But once the nisuin takes place, the full marriage, and now the husband is being made for the neder alone, not together with the father, so the father's out of the picture, and the husband could only be made for the nedarim that happened after the full marriage, but not before that. So the Ze'aklal over here is coming to be marbeh because even though she didn't yet come to the husband's house, she was only on the way, but because the father didn't accompany, she already left the father's house. That's considered to be like she came already to the husband's house, and that's it. Now only he alone could be made for the neder from this time forward, not from before. Okay, Zokta Elige Mishneh Teisha Na'orais. Here you have the following 9 Na'orais. Na'orais literally usually means a naira, but over here Na'orais means 9 different cases of girls that Nedreyen Kayomin, that the neder that they make will be in effect, and the father cannot be made for this neder. Okay, the Mishnah will give 9 different cases, but as we'll see here in the Mishnah, it's really divided into 3. It's 3 points, that the 3 different situations that a father can be made for the neder. One is that the father does not have any possession over her, and that's in a situation where she already got married, and even though her husband divorces her or dies, she never goes back to the father's house if she was fully married already. That the Mishnah actually calls a Yisaima. That's called a Yisaima b'chayi aviyah. She's a Yisaima, her father's still alive, but she never goes back to her father's rishus. Then the situation where the father dies. So obviously if the father dies, he's not being made for her neder, so her neder is kayam. And the third situation that the Mishnah will describe is a begeres. The power of the father to be made for the daughter's nedarim is only a naira, not a begeres. Okay, but as I said, the Mishnah divides these 3 categories into 9 cases. So the first category is begeres. She made the neder when she's a begeres, and vihi yisaima. But now she became a yisaima. And again, over here, when the Mishnah says yisaima, it means a yisaima but the father is really still alive. And why is she called the yisaima? Alebedik yisaima, right. And the reason she's called the yisaima is because she already was fully married. So she's out of the father's possession. That's the first case. She happens to also be a begeres, and because her being a begeres, the father can't be made for the neder for that reason. But here the Mishnah is saying, focusing on this, vihi yisaima. The fact that she already got married is the reason why the father can be made for the neder. Or the second case, naira. She made the neder when she was a naira, ubagra, then she became a begeres, and vihi yisaima. And she also got married and then divorced, and therefore she's a yisaima during the father's lifetime, and the father can't be made for the neder.
What's the difference in the first case?
The only difference is that she made the neder when she was a naira. Right? That's it. The only difference. But it's the same thing, that the main thing the Mishnah is focusing on here is the fact that she's a yisaima b'chaye ha'av, and that's why it can't be made for the neder. Third case, and here, the only reason the father can't be made for the neder is because she already was married before and she's a yisaima b'chaye ha'av. Naira shaloi bagra, she's a naira, she's not a begeres, and she made a neder. But for Yisayma, she's a Yisayma in the lifetime of the father. And again, the reason is because she already was fully married to someone. Okay, that's the first category. Again, this is called Yisayma B'chaye Av. Second category, B'geres, a B'geres that makes a neder umeis avia. Her father passed away. So the father is not being made for the neder. So her neder is Kayam. Naira, she made the neder when she was a Naira, and then she became a B'geres umeis avia, and her father passes away. So again, father passed away, so her neder is Kayam. He's not here to be made for the neder. Or Naira, Shaloi Bagra, even a Naira, she's not a B'geres, so a Naira is in the father's possession. Umei Savia, and the father passed away, so he's not here to be made for the neder. So in all these cases, it's the same point. The father died, he's not here to be made for the neder. Okay, the last category, again, the Mishnah divides it into three cases. A situation of a B'geres, this itself, that she's a B'geres, the father can't be made for the neder. Naira Shemei Savia, a Naira, she made the neder as a Naira, and her father passed away. Umishemei Savia, after the father passes away, Bogra, she becomes a B'geres. So obviously the father is not alive, he can't be made for the neder, but here we're focusing on the fact that she's a B'geres, and because of the Bagros, the father can't be made for the neder. B'geres Vavia Kayam, or a B'geres, she makes the neder as a B'geres, and the father is alive. So the father can't be made for the neder once she is a B'geres, which is from 12 and a half and older. Or Naira B'geres Vavia Kayam, she made the neder as a Naira, and now she's a B'geres. The father only heard about the neder when she was a B'geres, so that's too late. So even if the father's alive, he can't be made for the neder. Okay, those are the 9 different cases. Now Rabbi Yehuda adds another case. Af hamesi, that is, bitoy haketana. Even a father that marries off his daughter, that's a ketana, v'nis almana, or yinis garsha, and she became an almana, or she got divorced, v'chozra etzla, and she went back to the father's house because her husband died or divorced her, and now she's still a naira. So you may think that when do I say that if she got fully married and her husband died or divorced her, that she does not go back to the father if she got married as a naira. But if she got married as a ketana, maybe then she should go back to the father's house if she gets divorced. Rabbi Yehuda says, even though she got married as a ketana, she does not go back to the father's house. That's the chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda. Talk to Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rab, Zu Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. The way our Mishnah divides all these cases into 9 different cases, this is Rabbi Yehuda really speaking. So when it says in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Ima Af, it's really the entire Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda divided it into these 9 categories, or 9 cases rather. Chachamim say, Shalosh Nairais Nedreyen Kayamin, that it's really just 3 Nairais that their Nedarim are Kayam and the father cannot be made for the neder. One is B'geres. In the age of Bagris, from 12 and a half, the father can't be made for the neder. The Yisayma, and a Yisayma, which means literally a Yisayma, if the father passed away. And the Yisayma B'chayav, or a Yisayma in the father's life, if she already got married to someone else fully, and she goes back to the father, she's called a Yisayma B'chayav, the father can't be made for the neder. So there's no machlokes here. The Ran explains, there's no machlokes here between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. It's just a matter of whether you're going to just say the three categories and that's it. So it's 3. Or Rabbi Yehuda went and specified all these examples and all these cases that Ran says. I think he brings from the Yerushalmi that Rabbi Yehuda wanted to sharpen his students, so he divided it into all these different cases, so to see like which case falls into which category. But there's no machlokes here regarding this halacha.
But the Mishnah says
right. So that Rabbi Yehuda is speaking in the end of the Mishnah, but really the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. That's what the Gemara is basically saying here. Yeah, sagt der Heilige Mishnah, Kainam she'eni nene la'aba olavicha. A person's wife makes a neder that I will not have ana from my father or from your father. In other words, her father-in-law. But she makes this neder with a condition. Im oisa ani al picha. If I work for you. Okay, that's her neder. So now if you think about this neder, this is a neder with a condition. Both the neder and the condition are something that the husband should be able to nullify. Again, the rule beneged to the husband being made for the nedarim of his wife, he cannot be made for any neder his wife makes. He could only be made for a neder which is either inui nefesh, something that's an affliction for her, or a neder which is beinay lebeina, something between the husband and wife. So now, look at the neder here. She makes the neder and says, I'm not going to have anah from my father or my father-in-law. That's a neder which is inui nefesh, because she can't have anah from them. If you remember, we learned before, Shmuel says a person, the wife that is, makes a neder, she won't have enough from one person, that's called inui nefesh. And then what's her condition? Condition is, if I don't work for you, if I don't do something for you, that's a neder shebeinoy lebeino. So both the neder and the condition of the neder is something that the husband could be made for, even though they're not exactly the same. If you remember, we learned before the rules of a husband being made for regarding inui nefesh and beinoy lebeino is not exactly the same. Okay, but that's this neder over here. Now, there's another case. She'eni neneslach. She says, she makes a neder, I'm not going to have a no from you, from her husband. Now, that's obviously a neder which is inui nefesh. And what's her condition? Im oisa ani al pi abba va pi avicha. If I will do something for my father or for your father. Okay, so now this condition over here is not... It's not something which is inui nefesh for her, so let her not do it for her father. And it's also not something which is beinoy lebeino. It's not something which will be between the husband and wife. She's saying, I'm not going to do it for my father. So in both of these cases, the Tana of the Mishnah says, Harei ze yofer, the husband could nullify this neder. So now the general chiddush of what the Tana of this Mishnah is saying is that she made this neder with a condition. So the neder didn't take effect yet, because the condition wasn't fulfilled yet. But nevertheless, the husband could nullify the neder even before the neder takes effect. That's the general chiddush of this Mishnah. But the Ram points out there's a different chiddush. There's a chiddush in the Reisha, and then there's even a bigger chiddush in the Sefer. In the Reisha, both the neder and the Tanai is something that the husband has a power to be made for. Even though they're not exactly the same, but the husband has a power to be made for. So therefore, even though the neder didn't take effect yet, but even the t'nai of the neder is also a problem for her. It's also beinoy lebeino. So therefore the husband could be made for it even before the neder took effect. But in the sefer of the Mishnah, the neder itself is beinoy lebeino, or it's also something which is inui nefesh. She says, I'm not going to have a no from my husband. So that's inui nefesh. Condition of the neder. The condition of the neder is not an inui nefesh for her. She's saying, I'm not going to serve my father. So don't serve your father. It's not going to be an affliction for her. It's not anything between her and her husband. And still, the neder didn't take effect, and the t'nai is something she could theoretically keep. The Tana says that the husband can be made for the neder. And the reason is because we say that it's too difficult for her to keep such a condition, not to give anything to her father or to her father-in-law. We expect that to be very difficult for her, and therefore, even though the neder didn't take effect yet, the husband could be made for the neder. Okay, the Gemara now brings that this halach of the Mishnah is actually a machlokes. So Tanya and Abraisa we learn she'eni nenes la'aba lavicha. The same exact case like the Reisha of the Mishnah. She says, I'm not going to have hana from my father, from your father. And the condition is if I serve you, if I do something for you, for my husband, that is. So Rav Nassan argues with our Mishnah. Rav Nassan says that the husband cannot be made for the neder because the neder didn't take effect yet. She made a condition and she didn't fulfill the condition yet, so the neder didn't take effect yet. Even the condition is a problem, is something which stops her from serving her husband, and it's beinoy lebeino, it doesn't matter. The neder itself did not take effect yet, so the husband can't be made for it. Chachamim says, like we learned in our Mishnah, that because not only the neder is something that the husband could be made for, but even the t'nai is beinoy lebeino, that she won't be able to serve him, so therefore the husband could be made for the neder right away. Another case, Netula Ani Mina Yehudim, she makes a neder that I am separated from all Yidden. And we learned this already before. This lashon of Netula Ani Mina Yehudim refers to marital relations. And so that means she won't have marital relations with anybody, including her husband. But she says, a Tanai, im misham shosech, if I have relations with my husband, with you. So now, over here, this case, both the neder and the Tanai is between her and her husband. And it's also it's between her and her husband. Okay, so the neder and the t'nai are both very similar. So Rav Nassan says it doesn't matter. Lo yofer, you still can't nullify the neder, even though l'chayre you might say true the neder didn't take effect yet, but the t'nai of the neder is basically the same thing. The t'nai is stopping her from having relations with her husband, and that's something that the husband has the right to be made for. So, but Rav Nassan says if the neder itself didn't take effect yet, can't be made for the neder. Chachamim oimrim yofer, and in this case, the Chachamim say you could be made for. So obviously over here in this second case, the chiddush of Rav Nassan is a much bigger chiddush over here than the previous case. Over here, Rav Nassan is saying even though the t'nai is very similar to the neder itself, right? That she's netulim and Yehudim, she won't be able to have relations with anybody, including her husband. If she has relations with her husband, still Rav Nassan says you can't you can't be made for it. Chachamim says that because the T'nai is basically the same thing as the Neder, so therefore the husband could go ahead and be made for it right now, like it said in our Mishnah. Okay.